The planning meeting to order now at 9:24 a.m. And I'll start out with the process. End of 2, where the callers have been placed on mute. During the public meeting portion of the proceedings, the following procedure will be taken for each application being considered. I will announce the application in order as listed on the agenda. Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, will summarize her findings and give recommendations. The applicants to the application being considered will be asked if they wish to add any further information or comments. All participants will be unmuted for this portion of the proceedings. The public will be asked if they wish to make any comments on the application. In order to be recognized by the chair, please approach by stating through you, Madam Chair, I, and your name, would like to make comments regarding this application. Once the chair has recognized you, you will be able to speak. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, which was at 9:24, and I have the territorial land acknowledgement to read. Before our meeting gets underway, I would like to formally recognize the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman is located on the Mississauga Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. The Township of Alnwick-Haldeman respectfully acknowledges that the Mississauga Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Item 4. This is approval of the agenda. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting agenda of Thursday, October 28th be approved as circulated. Could I have a motion, please?
I'll move.
Okay, I got Councillor Hogg to move and Councillor Phillips to second. All in favor? Carried. Item 5 is approval of our September 23rd minutes. Be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting minutes of Thursday, September 23rd, 2021 be approved. Could I make have a motion for that one as well, please? Deputy Mayor Gibson, second by Councillor Booth. All in favor? Carried. Any comments or items from those minutes? Seeing none. So item 6 is the motion to adjourn to the Land Division Committee and Committee of Adjustment. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman, being a Land Division Committee of Adjustment, adjourn to a Land Division Committee of Adjustment meeting for the purpose of hearing consents applications at 9:28 a.m. Have a mover, please.
Councillor Phillip will move.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Phillips, second by Councillor Hogg. All in favor? Carried. Got too many places to look. Item 7 is our consent applications. We have 3 today. And the first one is application AH-17 2021. Jody Watt and James Ward, agents for Fidelity Homes. And this is for creation of a rural residential lot. And both of these, 17 and 18, are on the same properties. So I'm going to ask our planner, Jennifer Current, to walk us through those. Okay, Jennifer.
Good morning, through you, Mayor Latchford. There are 2 consent applications, AH-17 2021 and AH-18 2021, which have been applied from a property at 199 Turk Road. Both of these severances are from the same parcel of land, so I'm going to discuss them at the same time. When it comes time to make a decision will have to be made on each application individually. The property is located on the south side of Turk Road, east of Vernonville. And the property is generally, it's largely forested. There are some cleared areas in it where the previous owner had some gardens and that sort of thing. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling. This property was subject to two previous consent applications in 2019. These applications are essentially a resubmission of those applications. At that time, the consents were approved. However, the owner at that time did not proceed with finalizing the severances by fulfilling the conditions of consents. So the consents have lapsed. With these applications, one lot would be created on the east side of the property and one lot would be created on the west side of the property. Right now, I'm going to talk about the lot that would be created on the west side of the property, and that is application AH17 2021. And with that application, a 0.47 hectare lot would be created. Now, in that area on the property, there's a significant difference in grade between Turk Road and the property. There's quite a steep decline as you go off of the road. The adjacent landowner has expressed some concerns with respect to drainage issues that could arise from the filling that would need to take place on that property in order for it to be developed. In addition, there's also a cross culvert that goes underneath Turk Road in the general vicinity of that proposed lot. Now, the lot on the west side of the property is AH18-2021, and there are no real significant issues with respect to topography on that property. An entrance could be provided relatively easily. There's no significant change in grade that would warrant significant volumes of fill. It's the lot on the east side of the property that would pose the most challenges for development. Lands in this area some of them are under active agricultural cultivation. There's a storage barn on an adjacent on a property across the road. The northern portion of the abutting property to the east has been cleared, and that is the property that is developed with a small apple orchard. There's a small unoccupied livestock barn located north of the subject property and another small horse barn located approximately 535 meters away. There were no other livestock barns identified in the area. The property is located in the rural area of the municipality, and some portions, it would be the southern portion of the property, are actually designated environmental protection. The proposed severed lots are located well away from the environmental protection areas on the property. The provincial policy statement does allow for lot creation in rural areas, subject to confirmation that there's no natural heritage features, no natural hazards on the property, and the application has been reviewed by the county and the Conservation Authority and municipal staff, and it has been confirmed that there are no natural heritage features or natural hazards located on either of the proposed severed lots. Lower Trent Conservation undertook a site visit for the previous consent applications and did confirm a regulated area, wetland area south on the property. However, it is quite removed from the proposed severed lots. The lots are not located within the Oak Ridges Moraine, and in the county official plan, they are designated rural areas, and the county official plan allows for lot creation in accordance with the policies of the township official plan. The township official plan allows for new lots to be created in the rural designation. For a lot under 38 hectares, you could have a maximum of 2 severances from a property as it existed in 1990. provided the lots have frontage on a municipally maintained road, which in this case they do. It's Turk Road. They comply with MDS, minimum distance separation. Calculations were prepared for the off-site barn located just north of the property and a barn further away on Shelter Valley, and the proposed lots are located outside of that area. Now, the property is zoned rural and environmentally sensitive areas. Now, both of the proposed severed lots are about 0.47 hectares, and they would not comply with the minimum lot area requirement for the rural zone, and as such would need to be rezoned as a condition of consent. The retained lot is sufficiently sized to stay in the rural zone. Public Works has reviewed the application and they confirmed that severances can be granted. I met with that entrances can be provided on both of the severed lots. I met with Brian McMillan, the manager of Public Works, and we discussed the issues associated with the easternmost lot, and we agreed that one of the conditions of consent for that lot should be that the owner submit a site plan application and enter into a site plan agreement. And the purpose of that will be to identify a building envelope on that proposed severed lot, as well as a grading plan and an entrance location, all of which would have to be identified, and the grading plan prepared by a licensed professional engineer to ensure that there's no negative impact on drainage on the adjacent property to the east, as well as there's the cross culvert. So that needs to be taken into consideration. It's not often that I recommend site plan as a condition of consent, but in this case, I think it's important because we need to have it demonstrated that there is a viable building envelope on that lot that won't have a negative impact on the adjacent properties. As part of the site plan approval process, they submit their site plan application, and in this case, the site plan will need to be prepared by a licensed professional engineer, and township will review it, and we can have it peer reviewed to ensure that it meets engineering standards and requirements. So that is I am not recommending that same condition on the lot on the western lot, because that lot doesn't have the same challenges associated with the lot on the east side. So the recommendation is for both severances to be approved. However, AH 17-2021, one of the conditions would be that they enter into a site plan agreement with the municipality.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ward, would you like to address anything with this application? Or comments from the public?
Excuse me, through you, Mayor Latchford. I believe that the applicant's agent is also present at the meeting. It would be Tim Williams from Fidelity Homes, I believe, is at the meeting also.
Oh, okay, sorry. Mr. Williams, would you wish to address either one of these applications? From the public wishing to make any comments or have concerns?
Through you, Mayor Latchford, I would just like to confirm that the public's microphones have been unmuted for this public comment section.
They do have to unmute themselves to be able to speak. So if there is a caller that would like to speak, you will have to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm sorry. It's James Ward. I didn't realize I needed to unmute myself. So I'm the owner of the property, and we just are fine with the conditions on the east, the site plan agreement requirement. That will be fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now anyone from the public again?
I, Tony van Leeuwen. Hello,
Hello?
hello. Hello, I, Tony van Leeuwen, would like to address the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead now.
Okay. I want to make sure that it is not a possible peer review, but I really like to have a peer review since Fidelity Homes, the agent, is most likely going to be the new owners. It would be a conflict of interest or a possible conflict of interest if they would do the engineering.
Thought? Have any comment about that, Jennifer? Peer
Me?
review? Yes.
No, as part of the site plan application process, they submit their application and their application fees, and a deposit is required to cover the costs associated with a peer review and the registration of the site plan agreement. So that won't be a problem. It's a standard process that we go through for site plan approvals.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Are you okay with that answer, Tony?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments from council? The recommendations, Jennifer, for AH 17, please.
Certainly. Through you, Mayor Latchford. The recommendation is that application AH 17-2021 by Jody Watt and James Ward, agent Fidelity Homes, to sever a parcel of land for rural residential purposes in part of Lot 9, Concession 3, Geographic Township of Haldeman, is hereby approved subject to the following conditions: that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township, that the tax account for the subject property be paid up to date, that a zoning bylaw amendment be in effect for the severed parcel pursuant to the Planning Act, that the $10,205.70 development charge for the severed lot be paid to the township of Alnwick-Haldeman, and that 6, that the $1,500 cash in lieu of parkland fee be paid to the township of Alnwick-Haldeman, and 7, that the applicant enter into a site plan agreement with the township illustrating a suitable building envelope, entrance, and lot grading plan, all to the satisfaction of the township of Alnwick-Haldeman.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to that effect, council? Moved by Councillor Hogg. Can I have a second? Deputy Mayor Gibson. All in favor? For AH 18 now, Jennifer, please, with the recommendations.
Certainly. Through you, Mayor Latchford. The recommendation is that application AH 18-2021 by Jody Watt and James Ward, agent Fidelity Homes, to sever a parcel of land for rural residential purposes in part of Lot 9, Concession 3, Geographic Township of Haldeman, is hereby approved subject to the following conditions: that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 2, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 3, that the tax account for the severed parcel be paid up to, that the tax account for the severed parcel be paid up to date. 4, that a zoning bylaw amendment be in effect for the severed parcel pursuant to the Planning Act. 5, that the $10,205.70 development charge for the severed lot be paid to the township of Alnwick-Haldeman. And 6, that the $1,500 cash in lieu of parkland fee be paid to the township of Alnwick-Haldeman. And I'm sorry, I just want to add a sixth condition here because I forgot to include it in these decisions. And it would be further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. So that would be in addition to the 6 conditions that I had included in the report.
And it's just on this application?
No, after we do this, I want to go back and
Okay.
ask confirmation about applying that condition to the previous consent.
Okay, that's fine. Could I have a mover, please? With the added condition 7 on AH 18. Counselor Philip is the mover. Could I have a second? Counselor Booth, all in favor? Carried. Now we have to go back and add.
Yes, through
an
you,
eighth
Mayor
condition.
Latchford. I had forgotten to include the condition on AH 17 that requires the applicant to submit the digital DWG file for the severed parcel. It just helps with our GIS system because we can input the documents directly into it. So if we could, we may need Pat's input on how we do this. I would like to add the condition, and I can read the condition to that decision for AH 17/2021.
Okay, we'll hear from Pat.
Yes, you could add the condition in addition to the previous addition or recommendations. So if you had a separate motion to add that, if council's in favor of that.
Okay. So we'll add that then as a standalone motion for AH 17.
Okay, I will read the condition.
Okay,
So this will be condition number 8 on application AH 17/2021. Further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting.
thank you. Could I have a mover, please? Deputy Mayor Gibson, second. Counselor Hogg, is there any comments or questions on this from council? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay. Our next item is AH 19, concession 10, part of lot 21. It's a lot line addition. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Through you, Mayor Latchford. This application AH 19-2021 is for a property located at 146 Browns Road. The purpose of the application is for a lot addition purposes. And as background, there are 2 properties owned by the same people. A larger property is developed with a single detached dwelling and a small barn. And then there's a small undeveloped rural residential lot, hamlet residential lot. And the common property line goes through the middle of a pond, which isn't ideal. It's difficult to manage a lot line going through a water feature. So the purpose of the application is to sever a 0.11 hectare, or it's about a 15.5 meter strip of land from the undeveloped parcel and add it to the developed parcel to ensure that the lot line doesn't go through a pond. So the pond will be contained entirely upon the developed property, and the retained property won't have any of the water feature on it. The the retained lot will be sufficiently sized to accommodate any future residential development on it. It will be 0.4 hectares. So it's a pretty minor change, but at the end of the day, it will just make things cleaner and easier for the landowners rather than try to manage a pond that has a common lot line going through it. So the property is located at 146 Browns Road. It's on the north side of Browns Road, and it's in Fenella, which is a designated settlement area in the northwest quadrant of the municipality. Surrounding land uses are residential to the immediate south and west, and agricultural uses to the south and east. County Road 45 is located approximately 90 meters west of the subject property. The benefiting property, that's the property that the lands would be added to, are 2.3 hectares. And as I said before, they're developed with a single detached dwelling and a small barn, which houses 2 horses. There are no buildings or structures located on the subject property. The property is located on the Oak Ridges Moraine. However, it is located within a settlement area, and the rules are a little different in settlement areas. Designated settlement areas, you can actually do severances and that sort of thing. But in this case, they're not even creating a new lot. It's just a lot addition. And policies of the Oak Ridges Marine Conservation Plan allow for lot additions where no new lots are being created. Compliance with the MDS was reviewed. MDS calculations weren't required though, because both the benefiting property and the portion of the severed property are the benefiting property is developed and no new lot is being created. So the application is consistent with both the PPS and the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. No new lots are being created. In the county official plan, the property is designated rural settlement areas, and the rural settlement areas intended for housing, employment, tourism, and open space. County of Northumberland indicated that they had no problems with the proposed lot addition. In the the township official plan, the property is designated countryside rural settlement on Schedule 5C. And in the rural settlement areas, in the Oak Ridges Moraine countryside rural settlement areas, residential development is permitted, even though the proposed lot addition is not creating a new developable lot at this time. So the proposed severance complies with the policy set forth in the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman official plan. Both the subject property and the benefiting property are zoned development on Schedule B3 of the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman zoning bylaw. Permitted uses in the development zone include existing single detached dwellings, existing farm or agricultural uses, farm produce, outlets, home occupations, and accessory uses. And since both the proposed severed and benefiting parcel are zone development, a zoning bylaw is not required because the property will all be in the same zone. However, when it comes time for somebody to build on the retained parcel, that's the undeveloped retained parcel, they will need to apply for a zoning bylaw amendment to permit a residential lot on it. I didn't include it as a condition of consent because it's not strictly required at this point, but when somebody comes to develop it, they will need to rezone it. So the application was circulated. There were no agency concerns expressed during the review, and the recommendation is that and I've received no public comments regarding this application. The recommendation is that the application be approved subject to the conditions that are outlined in the report.
By something off the start for everyone. If the applicants choose to rezone it now, that would be fine and it would be all done. Is that a choice they can make?
Yes,
Yeah.
they can apply. I'm just not requiring a zoning bylaw amendment as a condition of consent with this application because the lot already exists.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Thanks. Any questions or comments from the applicants? Any questions or comments from the public? Read the recommendations then for the severance, Jennifer, then we'll make the motion.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Latchford, the recommendation is that application AH-19-2021 by James Starr to sever a parcel of land for lot addition purposes in part of Lot 21, Concession 10, Geographic Township of Haldeman, is hereby approved, subject to the following conditions: that a registered survey for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 2, further to the printed plan of survey, a closed polygon vector file of the part boundaries shown on the reference plan is to be provided in spatially referenced Autodesk DWG readable, Windows readable format to the satisfaction of the township. It is recommended that the applicant's Ontario land surveyor consult with the County of Northumberland GIS section to confirm acceptable standards and formatting. 3, that a draft transfer for the severed parcel be submitted to the township. 4, that the tax account for the severed parcel be paid up to date. 5, that the severed parcel be deeded as a lot addition to the recipient property, and that the applicant's lawyer submit an undertaking to register a consolidation on title giving effect to the lot addition. And 6, that the applicant's lawyer submit a legal opinion verifying that the lot addition lands will merge on title with the recipient parcel under the Planning Act.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion, council, please? Motion, Councillor Booth, a second. All in favor? Carried. Item 8 is a minor variance application from Harvey and Jesse Collins on the 134, the 7th line. So minor variance -02. And we'll let Jennifer walk us through this one as well.
Through you, Mayor Latchford. The purpose of this application, it's a minor variance application, and the purpose is to increase the lot coverage permitted for accessory structures on a property. The property is located at 134 7th line and part of Lot 19, Concession 7, Geographic Alnwick. The property is developed with a single detached dwelling, an existing small boathouse, and several accessory structures. They're small garden shed type structures. And the 3 existing small sheds and boathouse, together with the proposed 800 square foot or 74.32 square meter boathouse, would result in about a 9.2% lot coverage for accessory structures, and the zoning bylaw only permits a total of 5% lot coverage for accessory structures. Even though the amount of lot coverage for accessory structures would be 9.2% if this application was approved, the total lot coverage would still be below the maximum 15% lot coverage that's permitted in this zone. Because the cottage on the property is a relatively small cottage. Right now, the property is zoned limited service residential, and you can have a 15% lot coverage. A 20% lot coverage. And with the new boathouse and the existing buildings on the property, it would only be 15.7% lot coverage. So they're still below the total permitted lot coverage. It's just that the amount that would be attributed to accessory structures is greater than the 5% permitted. The application was reviewed by Northumberland County, who didn't have any concerns regarding it. It was reviewed by Lower Trent Conservation, who has confirmed that the property is regulated by Lower Trent, and the boathouse would require a permit from Lower Trent. However, their policies or guidelines do allow for issuance of permits for boathouses within the regulated area, because by virtue of its function, it needs to be located within a regulated area. You can't have a boathouse that's not on the shoreline. That's the function of it. So the recommendation is the application be approved. And under the Planning Act, there are 4 tests for a minor variance, and they are: the variance must be minor, it must be desirable for the appropriate development of the land, it must maintain the general intent of the zoning bylaw, and maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan. Now, in this case, the property is zoned shoreline residential, limited service residential, which anticipates residential development, seasonal residential development. It's appropriate. The property is zoned to permit that use. Total lot coverage will not be exceeded. Our official plan allows for this type of development. So the recommendation is that the minor variance be approved to permit a maximum lot coverage of accessory buildings of 9.2% to permit the construction of the proposed 800 square foot boathouse.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to address this application? Public have any concerns or questions? The recommendation here, it's short. Jennifer's already read it, so I'll just refresh. The recommendation is that the application MV02 2021 by Harvey Collings and Jesse Collings, legally described as 134 7th line, part of lot 19, concession 7, geographic Alnwick, is hereby approved to permit a 9.2% maximum lot coverage for accessory buildings instead of the normally permitted 5% be approved. Have a motion, mover, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Gibson. Second. Councillor Phillip, all in favor? Carried.
Mayor Latchford, I do have somebody in the waiting room. Can I let them in?
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, caller. Can I get your name, please?
They have a report that said they had a number of complaints.
Good morning, caller. Good morning, caller. Can I get your name for roll call, please?
Yes, it's Richard Hunt.
What's your last name, Richard?
Hunter.
I'm going to put you on mute.
Me?
Nine is the motion to reconvene to the municipal planning meeting. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Alnwick Haldeman, being a land division committee of adjustment, reconvene to the municipal planning meeting at 10:03. Have a mover, please. Deputy Mayor Gibson, second by Councillor Phillip. All in favor? Carried. Item 10. This is a public meeting for zoning applications, and our first one is Jacob and Tammy Medema. Z-16 2021, bylaw number 98-2021, concession 4, part of lot 16 and 17, geographic Haldeman. And Jennifer, you can take us through this one as well, please.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Latchford. This is a zoning bylaw amendment application that was submitted as required as a condition of consent for consent application AH04-2021, which was conditionally approved by the Land Division Committee of Adjustment on April 22nd, 2021. With that application, a surplus farm dwelling was severed from an agricultural property on the west side of Eddystone Road. The retained lots are agricultural, and because this property is located is designated agricultural in the Township of Alnwick-Haldeman official plan, the retained lands must be rezoned to an agricultural exception to prohibit any further residential development on the property. So with this application, the severed residential dwelling would be rezoned to a rural residential zone, and the retained agricultural lands would be rezoned to an agricultural zone. Exception zones are required for both of these parts of the property. The agricultural exception is required because the total lot area of the retained portion is smaller than the size normally required for the agricultural zone. It's 19 hectares. So an exception would have to is required to recognize the 19 hectare property and to prohibit any further residential development on the land. And the severed surplus farm dwelling would be rezoned to a rural residential exception zone. And the exception zone is required because right now for the existing dwelling, it has a 3.5 meter front yard setback. The dwelling is located quite close to Eddystone Road. So the exception zone will recognize the setback for the existing dwelling. Now, if they go to rebuild on the property, if they want to demolish that house and rebuild, any future development would have to be set back the appropriate size for the appropriate distance for the rural residential zone. It's only the setback for the existing dwelling that's being recognized. And we do that to make sure to recognize the existing dwelling, but make sure that any future development is sited better on the property than it already is. I haven't received any public comments with respect to this application. I did receive one comment in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw. It was expressing concerns with the loss of agricultural land for the purposes of residential development and concerns that multiple residential lots would be created in the future. Concerns were also expressed regarding impact of residential development on water supply. I provided additional information to this person. It was received by email. I emailed them back explaining that the retained lands were going to be rezoned to an agricultural exception to prohibit any further residential development, and I did not receive any subsequent emails from them. The application was reviewed by Northumberland County, Lower Trent, Alderville. We've also circulated it to other agencies, and we don't usually hear back from the other agencies. The county had no concerns. Northumberland County had no concerns. Manager of Public Works commented on the severance application, and there's an existing entrance for the single detached dwelling, and there are farm entrances on either side of the conditionally approved severed lot. So the recommendation is that the property be rezoned to the agricultural exception 42 zone, which would prohibit any residential development on the retained parcel and recognize a 19 hectare lot area, and the rural residential exception 62 zone, which would recognize a 3.5 meter front yard setback for the existing single detached dwelling.
Other comments from the applicant? Anything from the public? Questions or comments? have then the recommendation for the motion. Phil? You're going to make the motion? You're on mute, so I'll read the motion then.
Yes, I am making the motion. Thank you.
Okay, that application Z-16 2021 by Jacob and Tammy Medema to amend the zoning on a parcel of land located in part of lot 16 and 17 concession 4 geographic township of Haldeman from the agricultural bracket A zone to the agricultural exception 42 bracket A-42 and the rural residential exception 62 bracket RR-62 zone in the township of Alnwick Haldeman, zoning bylaw 19-2021 as amended be approved. So Councillor Philip is making that motion. Can I have a second? Deputy Mayor Gibson, all in favor? Carried. Now we're going to our bylaws, item 11. The first bylaw is bylaw number 98-2021. And it's this application we just addressed, Jacob and Tammy Medema. Be it resolved that bylaw number 98-2021, being a bylaw to amend the comprehensive zoning bylaw number 19-2019 as amended of the Township of Alnwick Haldeman for Jacob and Tammy Medema, concession 4, part of lots 16 and 17, geographic Haldeman, be read and deemed to be passed this 28th day of October 2021. Can I have a mover, please?
I'll move that.
Councillor Hogg, second. Deputy Mayor Gibson, any further comments? All in favor? Carried. Item 12 is planning reports. We have 2 planning reports today. And just a question for you, Jennifer. Our planning report for short-term rentals comes ahead of item 13, a delegation, a person wanting to speak to this. Should we, how do you want us to handle that? Do we want the delegation first, or is that new on the agenda? Well, it's not new, but
No.
just leave it as it is.
Well, I thought that if I could make the way it's structured now is we could have the report and then they could provide their comments after
Prior.
hearing the report. And they could
Okay,
either
so-
provide support for it or other suggestions to it.
So do you want us to just hold the decision for the actual report after the delegation?
You could do that. I'm not sure about process for Pat. See, the thing with it's a planning report, but it's not a public meeting. So we don't really have a public meeting section. So that's why they had to submit a delegation request in order to
Okay.
be able to speak to it. So you could, I guess we could reverse the order and they could provide their comments and then I could go ahead with the report, or you could defer a decision. I would defer to Pat on that process.
So through you, Madam Chair, it's important to let the delegation have his or her say, and then council can make their recommendation following Jennifer's report. So I would suggest you change that just so that the individual has a chance to give council their concerns.
Okay, so we'll do the delegation ahead of the report?
You can
To-
do that or
totally?
hold your decision.
Hold the decision, okay.
Yes.
Okay, okay, so how about we have the report from Jennifer at the time, allow the delegation to speak, and then council can go back to her report for the decision. Is everyone okay with that? Okay. Our first one is a little bit shorter. Council report number 2021-PED 52, Regrafton Heights. It's a request for a 2-year extension of the draft plan approval. We've probably read that. It's pretty straightforward. Be it resolved that council report number 2021-PED 52 from Jennifer Current, Senior Planner, dated October 28th, 2021, Grafton Heights request for a 2-year extension of their draft plan approval. It's a simple email, and Jennifer has made the recommendation to allow that extension. So could I have a mover, please? And Councillor Phillip, and it's to allow that extension. Yes. Okay. Second. Councillor Hogg. Any comments or questions from council? All in favor? Carried. Okay, so we'll first do Jennifer's report on short-term rentals. And you can start with that now, Jennifer, for council, please.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Latchford. I was requested by council to prepare a report or provide options about short-term rentals. Council requested that I do this because there have been a number of concerns regarding and complaints submitted to the township with respect to short-term rentals in the municipality. There are some that have caused problems in the municipality. Problems are generally relate to noise, parking, fireworks, campfires, resident or transient turnover. It's just not there. They typically tend to be in single detached dwellings, and it's not in some cases they're in neighborhoods or on waterfront properties. And it's not just somebody going in and enjoying their property. It's every weekend there's a different group of people that are there. And in reviewing short-term rental websites, there are a number of short-term rentals located within the municipality. However, they tend to be clustered on waterfront properties. There are some that aren't on waterfront properties, that's true, but there seem to be clusters of them or more of them on waterfront properties. And many of the listings advertise accommodations for quite large groups from like 8 to 15 people. And in reviewing, we have received complaints regarding large party groups causing disturbances on some of these short-term rental properties. And in reviewing the short-term rental websites, you can see some of the accommodations that they're providing and the number of rooms that they say that they'll, or number of people that can be accommodated on them. And then I can find the properties on our municipal GIS system, and there isn't necessarily the requisite parking for all of the vehicles. If you're going to have 15 people in some of these facilities, some of them don't have parking for more than a couple of cars. So it's quite problematic. And in reviewing them, you can also see what's essentially a one bedroom cottage is being advertised for 8 people, but they have 1 bedroom and then put 3 double beds in the basement and say it sleeps 8. So they tend to be, I think in some cases, get a reputation, or a lot of party groups come and visit them and cause disturbances for adjacent landowners. Short-term rentals are generally defined as rental accommodations that are rented or leased for a period of time of up to 30 days. And in terms of options for regulating them, in the report I provided, there are reviews of how different municipalities have dealt with them. The Municipal Act contains provisions which allow municipalities to license businesses, and some municipalities have passed bylaws regulating short-term rentals. City of Toronto their short-term rental bylaw, they only permit short-term rentals in an owner's principal residence for up to a maximum of 180 nights per year. And your principal residence is the residence that you get your official mail to, where your tax bill is sent to. So in the city of Toronto, you wouldn't be allowed to rent out for short-term rental a cottage property or a second residence that you might have. It's only your primary residence that you can. The town of Huntsville uses a combination of zoning regulations and municipal licensing to regulate short-term rentals. The zoning bylaw contains a short-term rental definition and permits short-term rentals in a number of zones. It contains parking provisions for short-term rentals, and the licensing bylaw contains a number of definitions and very specific regulations pertaining to short-term rentals. And I gave a list of them. Now they also, in Huntsville, they have a code of conduct that must be provided to all renters. And in their licensing bylaw, they also require the submission of a site plan and a floor plan illustrating the dwelling layouts and the property layouts, identifying the location of the rooms, use of each room, where your smoke detectors are, where your early warning systems are, your fire extinguishers, your parking, where they're going to put the outdoor garbage containers and all of that. So it's quite a comprehensive way of doing it. They also contain, their licensing bylaw also contains a provision that allows the municipality to revoke a short-term rental license if 3 or more notices to comply or complaints have been received by the town within a 6-month period. Now I attached that. The report is really lengthy, but it's only lengthy because I included some of the licensing bylaws that other municipalities have passed. So I included the town of Huntsville there. And in Huntsville, you're not restricted to they allow short-term accommodations in a dwelling that's not your primary residence. So they've got 2 license fees. They've got a license fee of $250 for a primary residence and $500 for a secondary residence. Now it's Huntsville also, I believe both them and Georgina in their licensing bylaws require inspections of the short-term rental accommodations. So when you submit your application, you submit your site plan and your site plan and your building plan. And then you would have building and fire, probably building and fire would go out and conduct an inspection to make sure that the buildings comply with the building code, that they have the appropriate fire protection, your fire detectors, your carbon monoxide detectors, your smoke or your fire extinguishers. And they've got, this wouldn't be up to fire, but we would make sure that they have the required number of parking spaces, and that parking spaces have to be on a driveway. You can't be parking in the grass in the middle of the lawn and that sort of thing. They have to be appropriate parking spaces. So there would be an inspection component to it also. The City of Kingston licenses short-term rentals using the provisions of the Municipal Act, similar to Huntsville. However, their licensing bylaw wasn't quite as comprehensive as Huntsville's. Huntsville's is really quite good. And through the licensing bylaw, they limit the number of rooms that can be individually rented and sleeping accommodation for a maximum of 4 individuals, except where it consists of an entire dwelling. They also contain parking provisions. Their licensing fee is $180. Town of Georgina has, theirs is remarkably similar to Huntsville, as sometimes you'll discover in planning and other municipal things, when somebody finds a good thing, they borrow them. So Georgina's is quite similar to Huntsville. They've got parking provisions and everything else, but they have a much more complicated. They also have a renter's code of conduct, but they also have an extremely complicated demerit point system for complaints. If you receive a certain number of demerit points, then your license can be revoked, but it's quite extensive, and I think it would be very time consuming in trying to deal with their demerit point system. But they have a lot more fees, and in Georgina, they also cap the number of short-term rentals within their municipality at 150. And they also require a 100-meter separation distance between short-term rentals. So if one property is gets a short-term accommodation license and their neighbor wants to do it, and they're within 100 meters, they can't unless they apply for a variance, and the variance fee is $1,400. So that is something different that they have in theirs. Brighton, the municipality of Brighton, which is our neighbor, well, not our neighbor, but in our area, they have draft official plan policies and zoning bylaw amendment policy or zoning policies that would deal with short-term accommodations. Again, theirs are a little different. They're using sort of a density limit on short-term rentals, which can be very challenging to try to implement. So they're saying 15% of the existing dwellings within a 60 meters of the lot boundary. So you're drawing circles around things and trying to establish how many rental units you've got within a certain area. I find it to be a more cumbersome way of dealing with it when you've got a density limit like that. So there are options for the municipality to try and regulate short-term rentals. We can put some definitions in our zoning bylaw. We can pass a municipal licensing bylaw. But there are costs associated with every time you pass a bylaw and you license something, there are costs associated with it. So the costs of advertising for a public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment, it would be about $1,400. So that's not significant, but it is something. Now, Section 151 of the Municipal Act gives municipalities the authority to license businesses, and there's no public notification requirement. So we don't have to do a public notice for that. But the municipality can also impose fees under the Municipal Act, which would help cover the costs associated with implementing a licensing bylaw. They can also, the municipality can also impose penalties for not complying with licensing bylaws that they pass. But as part of the licensing process, or as part of the licensing process, or trying to enforce regulations on Airbnbs, there will be costs incurred by the municipality. Enforcement of the licensing and zoning bylaw will require staff time. Complaints will have to be investigated and addressed. Right now, the township's chief building official is also the bylaw enforcement officer. With the addition of short-term rental licensing and regulation, there may be a need to increase staff time dedicated to bylaw enforcement. So that's a consideration that council needs to take into when they're considering licensing or regulating short-term rentals. So I just provided a summary. A licensing bylaw could establish limits on the number of people per guest room, establish a maximum number of guest rooms, include parking requirements, establish a code of conduct for renters, limit the number of licenses to be held by one individual, require the preparation of site plan and unit layout plans, require unit inspections, allow for the revocation of permits or for violations of the license agreement, regulate garbage and recycling containment. All of those could be accommodated in a licensing bylaw. One of the concerns or complaints that we had received regarding some of the short-term rentals, was the discharge of fireworks within the municipality. Now, I believe that the municipality did pass a bylaw last week, bylaw 81/2021, which would regulate and require permits for fireworks. So that has been dealt with under a separate bylaw. So this was just an information report to let council know how or what tools they have to regulate Airbnbs, and then you can decide what you would like to do.
Thanks, Jennifer. Council, do you have any questions for Jennifer?
I have one.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. That was a very thorough report, and that was quite a bit of work. I was wondering, how many do you estimate short-term rental units we have in this municipality?
I'm sorry, I through you, Mayor Latchford, I don't know how many we have within the municipality, because there are different short-term rental platforms. There's vacation rental by owners, there's Airbnbs, and there's other ones that I don't really know of. I believe, it's funny, after this report was prepared, I received an email from a company, I believe it's out of Toronto. And I think what they do is they have some sort of a computer program where they help municipalities identify the short-term rentals within the municipality. And then you can go out, and if you pass a licensing bylaw, then you can go, they've identified them and we can go out and approach them. But I don't know. I'm sorry, I just don't know. It's not one or two. It's definitely more than one or two. And some resorts actually advertise on short-term rental platforms also. So we have some resorts on Rice Lake that advertise their accommodations using Airbnb websites, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
I would think though, Jennifer, with the resorts, they already have their rules and what their clients can and can't do. I don't see them as the issue.
No, I was
because that's their business, but I know they do that as well because they've, especially during COVID with, they got to catch up now.
Yes, through you, Mayor Latchford. When I said that, I just meant to what I wanted to get at was just because there's a listing on Airbnb or vacation rental by owner, it doesn't mean that it is necessarily privately, well, it would be privately owned, but somebody's cottage property. So.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And we don't know how many, if any. I know there are in Northumberland County where maybe people are coming to experience a weekend on a farm and that sort of thing as well. And that's become a bit of a business. And I'm not sure if some of those are licensed. I'm not really talking even about our township. I know there's a couple in other townships. So, and ours are majority on Rice Lake. And the complaints have been the noise, the fireworks, the people, large number of people. And when those owners maybe rent to somebody, they may not even know they're bringing 25 others with them. So that responsibility goes to those owners as far as I'm concerned. And you look at the code of conduct for the renters. That could cause a lot of expense for our townships constantly sending staff out. So to write that code of conduct and give it to the owners and how much responsibility they would have for it, as opposed to us getting complaints and our staff having to go out weekend after weekend. They're not police officers. So it's a fine line there. I'm glad you put it in, but I think we have to be very aware of what costs that could be for us and the repercussions. Deputy Mayor Gibson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Latchford, to Jennifer, thank you for providing all that information. I know that was It's been quite a hot topic over the course of the summer. So I'm just looking to get a sense from you on how long that process would take. You know, if we give you direction to draft the zoning bylaw between, you know, today and when we actually could have the public meeting and get it approved. Are we looking at months, or what's your sense?
Through you, Mayor Latchford, the approval, if we were going to do a zoning bylaw amendment that would regulate, regulate parking and include permit Airbnb or short-term rentals in certain areas, it would take, we have to advertise a meeting 20 days in advance. I have to do an agency circulation. Generally, I tell people 3 months. So if I was to start it now, I'm just looking at my piece of paper that I have for my, we would do an agency circulation beginning of November. Public notification would go out in December. I mean, technically, we could have something for December, but it would be tight.
But I guess what I'm getting at is we would be, if we move ahead with this, we would be well positioned for the upcoming 2022 rental season, that, you know, we could address issues.
Yes, if you want, it would to give us a little more time and get something together that that I really would be happy with. It would, if we brought something forward in to February's municipal planning meeting, it would be, assuming it wasn't appealed, it would be in effect by mid to end of March.
Okay. So lots of time for the owners to, to get anything together that was necessary for them in the bylaw.
Yes. Now, in addition to the zoning bylaw amendment, if I think that a licensing bylaw, because a licensing bylaw under the Municipal Act gives you some more tools. You've got a little broader range under this. So I think it would be a combination, if you decided to proceed with it, a combination of both a licensing bylaw and a zoning bylaw amendment.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jennifer.
Anything else? Any other comments from council? I have one other one while I think of it, Jennifer, and it would be after the we did the bylaw, that it be circulated to either our real estate board or our local realtors, so they were aware. And, you know, along with that, probably send them the fireworks bylaw as well. That way it keeps, if people are interested in talking, you know, I've paid all this money for this place, I need to rent it out a few weekends or whatever, which lots of people do, at least the realtors would be able to advise them on our bylaws. Just a suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just not make our decision on this right now. We'll allow David Hayes to speak to this as a delegation, and then we'll come back to this report. Do I need a motion to that effect, or we can just do it?
I would just go ahead and do it.
Okay, so if council's good with that, we'll just go ahead and Mr. Hayes, if you would like to speak to this now, you're free to do so. To unmute.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Through you, Mayor Latchford. I just want to give people some reality on this from a person who lives in the area and has to deal with this. This is not a family who is, renting out their house a little bit here and there to make a few bucks to pay the mortgage. These are full-time businesses. Where I live, which is on Chubb Point Road up near the lake, I have 2 B&Bs adjacent to me, one right beside me and one right beside that. There are no rules. You can look up the Airbnb rules, and there are rules about no dogs, no fires, no this, no that. I have a 1-bedroom house next to me that has a well that even when only 2 people lived there, constantly ran out of water, now being inhabited by anywhere up to 40 people. They charge $400 a day. So 10 people kick in $40 each, and they're, that sort of thing. There's fires going on where I'm sure there are no permits. They're constantly running out of water. There's all kinds of loud music going on all hours of the night and day. The amount of people who come there during the COVID situation was completely illegal, but of course that will end at some point in time. And I don't even know if these places are licensed. I don't even know if the area I live in is zoned to allow such a business, because this is a business. This isn't your traditional B&B where somebody goes and stays in somebody's house and has a couple of meals as part of their stay and all of that. This is a full-time business these people are running. They do not live here 6 months of the year. They're renting it out constantly. Nobody ever really lives here. It's always a rental situation. And we also have a permanent dock in the water. And to the best of my knowledge, in Ontario, you are not allowed to put permanent docks in. They must all be docks that can be removed to do with the flow of the water and other such, ecological things. But I have no authority. Then the other problem we have is people who traditionally came for a little walk down the road and would walk down to the lake and walk along the shore and whatever. There's now a big rope across there. So I get people constantly saying to me, am I allowed to go down there to fish? Am I allowed to go down there to walk? And I don't really know what to tell them. I just tell them, go at your own risk sort of thing. I don't know the legalities. So I know all of this Airbnb stuff is new to the world in general, and certainly to our area, but I think it's really important that we put some things in place, because the people who moved out here to start with obviously came out here for some peace and quiet and a different kind of lifestyle than Toronto, such as I came from Toronto because I wanted to get away from that. Now I'm back into the midst of it sort of thing. And the people who come here, they have no qualms of doing anything, because for 90% of them, it's a one-off. They'll come here probably once in their lifetime. So they don't really care what they leave behind and what confusion they cause when they're here, because they're here for their 2 days or whatever, and then they're gone, and there's really no consequences. And by the time we put anything in place, they're gone. And the police have better things to do than getting calls from myself and our neighbors complaining about sound constantly. I mean, the police have much more important things to do. So I think we really need to put something in place to curtail this and put a handle on it. And I'd like to know how 2 B&Bs were allowed to get started. Or are they licensed, or do you even know about them? I mean, how did this ever happen that I could have 2 B&Bs right beside each other, and they're owned by the same people, and nobody lives here? I mean, that's for sure. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I don't have all the answers. I've researched what other townships done. And as Jennifer said, there's different situations in different places. But if we don't put something in place, I think, our poor police force is going to be constantly inundated with calls that aren't serious in nature, like, crimes in the sense of hurting people, but they're going to be called out here constantly to deal with these problems, because I have no authority to tell them anything.
Thanks, David.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I guess I can answer. How we find out is either by a complaint or someone sees it advertised on an Airbnb site.
Oh, they're both on there right now.
Yeah. And, you know, as you say, some of them are constant businesses, and we're finding out after the fact. And sadly, we're finding out with complaints. It's more complaints.
Every weekend we have new people.
Complaint driven than anybody saying there's a nice place there, quiet, if, you know. And it's really not fair to our tourist operators, I don't think, because their taxes are paying for cottages and accommodations for people to stay.
And up here, these people pay a lot of taxes, and the quietness of life that they wanted is no longer here.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for taking the time to come on. With any council members, do you have anything else to say to David or questions for him?
Are these places licensed?
Not yet.
And is there any zoning regarding such properties up where I live?
Not yet. That's what we're trying to work out here.
No, I realize
What
it's
we're
all
going
new
to be
the
able
world.
to do about them. And so that's why we've had Jennifer do the research. And we can let you know when she finishes up a report and there is a public meeting. If you would like to know that.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, just a quick question through you, your worship, to maybe Jennifer. Jennifer, when it talks about the bylaw could be used to establish, you know, the number of people per guest room and the parking and things like that, enforcement is huge, obviously, because we'll get a call and Daryl or somebody would have to go out there. If the owners don't really care about it and they're not listening to what happens, what's, I guess the word I'm looking for is what happens to them? Like, do they get a fine? Is there something that goes on their taxes? Like, what's the bylaw? What's the enforcement to send somebody out there and they just say, yeah. And as the person just said, you know, they're only here for 1 or 2 days. So it's not going to be the people that are actually renting it. And if the owners don't listen, if this person has 2 cottages up there and is doing it, what happens to them? Like,
Right. Through you, Mayor Latchford. The bylaws that, or sorry, the licensing bylaws that I looked at for Georgina and Huntsville, they both have penalty clauses and they have provisions that allow for the revocation of the revoking of a permit if in Georgina's case, it was you receive a certain number of demerit points, or in Huntsville's case, you receive a certain three complaints. Now, the complaints would have to be investigated to make sure that they're valid complaints, because sometimes we do get petty complaints, but I would suggest 3 valid complaints, and which have been confirmed by the bylaw enforcement officer. So if your licensing bylaw contained something about that, so you could revoke their permit. And by revoking their permit, they're no longer allowed to do that. I believe on the Airbnb website, at least, if municipalities license them, they're required to put the municipal license number or something on that permit. I'd have to check into that. I'm not sure. But in terms of financial penalties, the municipality under the Municipal Act, I believe, now we're getting into Pat's territory and Daryl's territory, but I believe the municipality can establish penalties. And I think both Georgina and Huntsville did that. So you could revoke a permit, and then you could impose the financial penalties that were included in it. Whether or not, I'm not sure, Pat, whether or not those penalties could then be put on the tax account or not for the property. I'm not sure. And they would go to the property owner, not the people that are occupying the B&B. But I'm not sure whether we can impose those on, put those on their tax bill or not, or whether you
Yes,
have
we
to.
can.
We can?
Yes,
Or whether-
if they didn't pay it, it can be added to the tax bill if that's what we have in the bylaw.
Do we have to go through the court process in order to have it put on their tax bill? I'm not sure.
I don't think so, do we?
Yes, I believe you would have to go through the courts in order to get the penalties approved.
Well, the penalty's
So,
approved,
excuse
but
me.
then if the penalty, I can't let you speak right now, David. Sorry. If the penalties were approved in the bylaw, it's not each individual one that would have to go to the courts, is it?
No, once it's approved.
Once
then-
it's
yeah.
approved. Then we would be able to do it, Jennifer. And you know, these owners need to take some responsibility. I've got calls due on weekends and then, or the first of the week often when there's been parties and too many people at one residence. And, you know, you talk about they own 2 people to a bed and there's 20, 25 people there. Some must not sleep. So it's just party time. It becomes party time in the neighborhood. Comments from council? Go ahead, Councillor Phil.
It's just a technical question or issue. Mayor, if you wouldn't mind, I'm missing some of your comments and I'm finding them very valuable. I think it's just a mic issue. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Okay. This will come back and we'll be able to discuss the issue. And what we need now, are we going to ask Jennifer to go further and bring back a bylaw? We'll have to have the public meetings and whatnot. And we need to know, council, do you want to pursue this at this time? And we would have it in place prior to next summer. Late spring would be the goal. Councillor Phillip?
Thank you. And through the mayor, my comment is that I very much support the idea. And I would make a motion to support the idea. My concern is enforcement. You know, I don't want to put something in place that can't be enforced by our small township. And so I was very interested to hear about the possibility of fining through tax, through the tax bill, if that has to happen. But
did you miss that?
no, I got that piece, and I understand how that might work. But I would want to be sure through our planner that, and through through council, that it is enforceable. You know, there's no point in putting something in place that can't be backed up, and we all know that. So that would be my only proviso. I would want to make sure that we could revoke the license and impose a fine if necessary, fairly simply, so that it doesn't tie up our small staff. That would be my comment.
Thank you. And also, in order for the police to be able to do anything, they need a bylaw.
Exactly.
Deputy Mayor Gibson?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Hayes, for addressing council. I appreciate that. And I think it's good for us to hear from, hear from the people that this is affecting. I'm wondering, and I don't know if anybody can answer this question right now, but when we passed the fireworks bylaw, we gave authority to the firefighters to issue, you know,
Yep.
what, I don't know what you call them, oh, tickets or
Fines,
citations or
for
whatever.
lack of a better
fines.
word, fines.
Would there be an opportunity to do same with this bylaw? Or are we getting too far flung? I truly believe that as our township grows and we are nestled in a tourist area between the lakes, that we are going to have to probably address staffing in terms of bylaw and staffing that can provide support to enact our bylaws. So anyway, that
I
may
agree, we
be,
will.
I'm kind of throwing it out there. It, you know, maybe it's an issue. I think I don't want the fact that, you know, we may struggle with being able to, you know, with staffing to hold us back on getting this in place. Because I think, you know, we're coming up to budget in 2022, and maybe what we need to think about as a council going into those deliberations is, you know, our staffing levels.
And who can be the bylaw officers?
Yeah.
And, you know, this really, some of this should not be put on the taxpayers to pay for either. So are the fines going to be high enough to cover the cost of having to do some of this work as well? I mean, that's a fine line, but we need to look at that at the time. So at least if owners aren't going to pay attention to who they're renting to, they may pay attention to a fine, but the fine has to be large enough that they will pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Because if it's a small fine, they're just going to, they'll just recover that in their rental costs. I'll let you speak in a minute, David. Any other comments from council? Okay, David, you want to have another say?
Yes, just a couple of questions.
Okay.
As things stand right now in this particular area, can somebody just buy a dwelling and then just start renting it out as an Airbnb or whatever they might want to call it? Do they have to come before you first, or can they just buy the house, start renting it, and that's the end of it until somebody has a problem?
That's the way it's been.
Right. Well, that's the problem.
That is the problem.
Because, you know, like I say, if you come to the corner where I live on any given weekend, you're going to see 40, 50 people. You're going to see vehicles. I mean, who do I deal with this boat launch? I mean, I don't have any authority to tell people you can't have a permanent boat launch, but I believe by law, you are not allowed to have a permanent boat launch. So then what happens? Who deals with that? Where do I go with that? What, you know?
That's federal. The Lake Ontario. No.
I was told it's Trent.
Oh, Trent Severn Water.
Right.
Waterways or conservation. You may want to start with them. And
right, but isn't it kind of working backwards? Because I mean, these people who own the dwelling, they have that dock. So what am I supposed to do? Go and complain about the dock? Do you know what I mean? I don't know where to go with this. Who do I go to?
If council directs us to, staff can ask about it.
council can direct staff to ask about that, David.
Thank you. I would appreciate that.
And
I'm sorry, I have to go and teach. Thank you very much for letting me tell you this, and thank you for your concern. I really do appreciate it. And I'm sure in time with some investigation, we'll get something done. If you need
Okay.
anything from me, I'd be more than pleased to help.
All right, nice to see you again.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, council. We want to move this forward. Mike
Yeah.
made the motion to move this forward for a new bylaw. And for Jennifer to bring that back, which will include public meetings. You need in that? Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Latchford, the last paragraph in my report, I recommended that if you want to direct me or staff, because I'll need Pat's in particular's help with the licensing bylaw, to prepare draft documents. What I would suggest is that I prepare or we prepare draft documents for your submission and review prior to scheduling a public meeting, so that that way we don't get to a public meeting and then I discover that council doesn't like the draft wording that I had prepared. So I would recommend that we prepare some draft documents, bring them back to council for your review, and then you can direct us to have schedule the public meeting.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
It's just that I wanted to get the, so people who are listening know that the public meeting would be part of this as well. And there may be more information that needs to be found out from staff as well that we don't know yet. So that's basically Mike's motion then, right, Mike? Yes, he's got his thumb up.
Yes, it is.
Can I have a second for that motion?
Proceed.
Sure. Second that.
Okay, Councillor Philip, go ahead. We have a seconder.
Yeah, that's fine. So my motion is that Jennifer proceed with her research,
Recommendation.
her research, and be prepared to make a recommendation to council in due course.
Okay. Any further comments on that? All in favor? Carried. Now we need a motion to have staff investigate a dock at Chubb Point on Lake Ontario that we're not sure if it's allowed to be there.
I'll make that motion.
Moved
Staff
by
can look
Councillor
into it.
Booth, second. That'll go to Lower Trent, Mike.
Yeah, probably will.
You might want to go down and have a look at it.
I will.
Okay, so seconded by Councillor Philip. Any further comments or questions? Notice of motions, Councillor Booth,
None at this time.
Councillor Hogg. Myself. We spoke last week about doing a flyer. If you've got any information from your committees or yourself that you might like to be addressed on that, can you send it in to staff, please? Just an email or whatever. That's all I have. Deputy Mayor Gibson,
Up and down right now.
None at this time.
Yeah, but I mean, what's her mind?
Councillor Philp.
Okay. Yes, I have nothing to add, but thank you very much.
Okay. Our confirming bylaw. Item 15, be it resolved that bylaw number 112-2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the municipal planning meeting of Thursday, September 23rd, 2021, be read and deemed to be passed this 28th day of October 2021. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Philip, Councillor Hogg, all in favor? Carried. And the adjournment, item 16, be it resolved that the municipal planning meeting adjourn at, where's my clock?
11:04.
Mover? job. See you next week. Happy Halloween. I guess. I never get anybody anymore. No, Chub
Chub
Point
Point.
down on Lake Ontario.